really quickly. I'll share those with you. And here they are. So we are recording this live. So we use this as both a video cast and also a live podcast. And we do rebroadcast the on-demand versions of these. You can see the links there. You can go to gavology.com/issues. You can find us on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on your favorite podcasting apps there. We will have a post-show Q&A. So at the end of the show, when I say thank you for joining us, and I take a little bit of a pause, for those of you guys who are joining us in the live audience, you can just hang out and we'll answer a few questions before we exit the show today. If you happen to be joining us from Facebook live stream or LinkedIn or any of the channels where we're live streaming on right now, and you want to be a part of the Q&A session, just go to gavology.com/issues. When you go there, scroll down a little bit and you'll see a registration link, and you can register for the live session here today and hang out with us for the Q&A. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome again to another episode of GovCon Coffee and Issues. I'm Carol Bernard, and this is my host, Mr. Michael Lejeune from RSM Federal. I wanted to pop in and give you guys just a few bullets on today's discussion. So number one, we want to talk about a brief history of the Veteran Verification / Certification Now program and what those mean. What happened with the big change resulting in 2021 from the National Defense Authorization Act. I want to talk about certified versus self-certified, what that means to you, what happened here in 2023 if you didn't get the memo there, what's going on in 2024. How do you know if you're good to go? So for those of you guys who are not sure if you are good to go in the systems, I'll actually do a live screenshot here and show you where you can look up your certification information if you're a veteran. For those of you guys who are not already certified, we're going to point you to and share some links to those resources, and then we'll give you a few additional tips and suggestions along the way. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen a little bit so we can have a quick discussion. Give me a second, guys. Oh, I don't even know if I was sharing my screen at that point in time.
You are.
All right, good.
You're good to go.
So am I still sharing my screen, Michael?
It's still showing up.
Sorry, guys, technical
difficulties. There you go. You're good now.
All right, here we are. So
the technology works.
Thank you so much for joining me today. This is a topic that is very near and dear to our hearts, as both Michael and I are both veterans. Mm-hmm. So Michael, thanks for joining us. We have a pending new year coming up, which is going to result in some important shifts, big time stuff for a lot of veterans that want to do business with the federal government.
Yeah.
So let's talk briefly about the history behind this veterans, what I was referring to as Veterans Verification and Certification. So if I may, I'll just kick us off. And I want to talk a little bit of history, okay? So back a little over a decade ago, the program was only self-certified. So basically, when you came in as a veteran, and still today, if you go to sam.gov and you register, there's a process where it's going to ask you, are you a veteran? If you say yes, it'll say, are you a service disabled veteran? It will say yes. So for a long time, there was only this self-certified process. Well, a little over a decade ago, the VA kind of got a black eye because there was a lot of firms that were self-certifying that were not really veteran-owned businesses or service-disabled veterans. So there was a lot of fraud happening in the program. So the VA established a verification system, right? So for a long time, the VA ran a verification system so that when you self-certify, the VA would actually verify you. And there was a portal that you would go through on the VA's website. After a while, you uploaded the required paperwork, and then they would verify you through that portal, right? So in 2021, as part of the National Defense Authorization Act, it directed that the Small Business Administration would take over the certification process for veterans. So they changed the word from verification to certification, right? So now the SBA is doing this certification, and actually they took that over on January 1st of 2023. So this whole year, the SBA started doing the certifications for veteran-owned small businesses, and we're going to share with you where that website is here in just a few minutes. Now, what happened essentially up until this point is that you had to go through the verification process with the VA to do VA contracting, right? Well, with all other agencies, DOD, all the civilian agencies, they were still accepting self-certified veterans on the set-asides and the sole source contracts, okay? And that continued to date, because even though the SBA took over this program on January 1st of 2023, it allowed for this phase-in period. And what that meant was that, hey, they would keep doing things the way that they've been doing it, is in terms of accepting your self-certification for set-asides and sole source contracts on non-VA agencies. However, on January 1st of 2024, everybody has to be officially certified by the SBA. And if you formally got the certification by the VA or the verification, that should have already transferred over. We're going to show you where you can go and to the website to verify if this has happened for you. But if you have not gone through this process, you now need to actually go through the SBA's certification process to actually get officially certified, because if you don't, then next year you won't be able to participate. And if you saw my LinkedIn post today, I shared that there's somewhat of like 82,000 veterans that have self-certified. And I wrote the numbers down here today, and let me flip to the page in my notebook. And of those who have self-certified, really less than 23% of the service disabled vets are actually certified, and less than 7% of veterans are certified. So most of these folks are all still self-certified. So Michael and I really anticipate that this is going to create several issues. One being that if you didn't get the memo and you're not certified, you will not be eligible for award under any SDVOSB or VOSB set-asides. Number two, if you wait until next year, with probably almost like 70 some odd thousand veterans that need to get officially certified, I can imagine that there may be a backlog once people start to realize that this is something that they need to get done to be eligible for award. And Michael, what else are you seeing in this with all of this that has happened? What is the what other issues do you see might be cropping up with this, or what are your insights into this whole shift from this, self-certification to the formal certification program, and the fact that really over like 80,000 veterans are still kind of out there without any kind of formal certification?
Yeah, I think you hit the majority of the points there. The biggest one that would concern me, or does concern me at this point, is the folks that are completely unaware. That's definitely the one that concerns me the most, because those are the folks that are going to proceed as business as usual. They're going to have a great discussion with a client. They're going to get to a point where they're ready for an award, and then they're going to get this shock of their life, basically. Like, hey, there's this 7-figure contract that we were about to be awarded, and now we're not even in the running. Or, right, which I've seen this happen as well, where they do get the award and then someone protests because, hey, we're not in the system. Yeah. That'll happen as well. Because you know how the government is, they may award something without checking that. It happens, right? I know everybody's like, oh, that couldn't happen. They do everything correctly. No, that happens. And so you may get an award and somebody will protest for whatever reason. The other thing that this will be number 2 for me is people not understanding what veteran owned actually means. I've seen a lot of this. Stephen Coprince, who does a lot of law commentating for you guys, has mentioned a couple of cases recently, but it's case after case after case where people just don't understand the requirements for being veteran owned. And they've always self-certified and just checked that box. Well, I own a majority of the company. I think one of the cases that was out there was 1,000 shares in the company and the majority owner owned like 501 shares. Well, 501 does not meet 51%. Right. Yes, you're a majority owner, but you're not 51%. The requirement is 51%. And the requirement is that you're making the key decisions in the company, right? And that's where a lot of folks have gotten into trouble recently of not fully comprehending how that's done. And they don't own the right amount of shares in their own company. So they're technically not going to meet that requirement of 51%. So those are probably my big two. One, just being oblivious to this going on and getting the shock of your life. Because I'll tell you, anybody that's doing even a high 6 or a 7, 8 figure contract, that's a big deal when you lose that all of a sudden and you've been counting on it. And then the second one, just not understanding the requirements. So if you have either of those two going on, you really need to understand what the requirements are. And it's as simple as Googling, the requirements for SDVOSB, VOB, whichever one it is you fall under, and go and looking at what the SBA says about that. That's all you have to do. But a lot of people just aren't aware of it. The challenge that a third thing that I think it will be a challenge as people go through is hitting the roadblock. And I don't know if the SBA has fixed this. You kind of hinted at it when you talked about your, when you're going in your SAM profile and updating it, you click VOB, then SDVOSB. Well, when you go to apply for your SDVOSB, that's not an option, or at least it wasn't a month ago. You had to select the veteran. And then I think it was on the next page or after you check that, where then service disabled became an option in there. And most people were getting to that, stopping and saying, Mike, this is the wrong form. There's nothing with service disabled. So they were stopping and they didn't know what to do next. And so I kind of see that as a third possible issue where they're going to get to that through the paperwork and be like, am I on the wrong website? Is there something broken? And try to get into the help desk for that. And then, wind up on hold forever and just get discouraged and walk away. Because that's what we do, right? We get discouraged and walk away. I know I'm just now in the process of getting my disability stuff with the VA now. And I've been out for 20 years because it's always been a paperwork thing. I'm like, right. Oh, you just throw your hands up because you're like, oh, you need this or that and you can't get it. But luckily in the great state of Tennessee we're in now, we had veteran service officers that worked for free for the county, and they were able to just put my paperwork in like that. And I'm on the right course, but it's very easy to get, discouraged by the paperwork and stop somebody from doing it. So those are probably my top ones right now.
Yeah. On that point, I want to also add one thing. I want to add two things to what you just said, a little piggyback here. The first is, in addition to the ownership, which is 51%, right? A lot of people don't understand the control elements with that. Mm-hmm. And what that means is, like, does the veteran or the service disabled veteran actually control the business? And there's a whole list of things that the VA would look at now, SBA is looking at. So we're going to give you some resources. So if you need some help trying to understand these things, but it's pretty much spelled out within a number of resources out there, but there are also folks that are out there that can help you out to step through this process. I'm going to share with you an on-demand webinar that talks more about the eligibility requirements and then takes you step by step through the new process. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Mike, just as you mentioned that you're not just now going through your own process in the state of Tennessee, there's a lot of people that are confused and don't really understand how this whole certification benefits them from both the service disabled vet side as well as the veteran side. Okay, so there's a couple of things. So one thing is that there's a nationwide goal of 3% that the agencies are looking to do business with service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. Okay, so that's the national goal. Now, within the VA system, they also have goals, and they're usually higher than that 3% because the VA is like vets first.
Yep.
And there's actually an act called Vets First. So that's kind of what started a lot of the contracting preference for the VA. So for a lot of veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs is going to really be a good source of perhaps go-to for you first, because if you can sell things that the VA is looking for, there's that preference for first, they're going to be first looking for service disabled vets, and secondly, for veterans. Well, what I think a lot of people don't know, Mike, is that the VA is the only program that actually has veteran-owned set-asides. So all the other agencies really don't have veteran-owned set-asides. So what does this mean? And what I think that I've seen a lot, Michael, is that a lot of veterans have not gone and get their disability through the VA just yet. And that is for various reasons, but I would highly encourage that all veterans, especially if you've served in the military for 4 years, 8 years, 20 years, it was put to me this way one time, Michael, because I think that a lot of veterans feel like, well, I wasn't injured in combat, and all
Right.
this other stuff. And I get that. But also, the benefits were put in place. And this is a good way somebody put it to me once, was that, hey, when you went into the military through MEPS, you came in with a clean record probably. When you got out, there was things that were documented into your medical record. So when you go to apply for disability and they ask you, what are you applying for? If you've got anything that's documented in your record, you say the things that are documented in my record here that occurred while I was on duty, active duty. And whatever that may be, it may be a diagnosis for sleep apnea or something else. Now, the way that this system works in the ratings is that if you send in something to the VA, they may say, okay, well, we acknowledge that, but we're going to put you at maybe a 0% disability rating, which basically means you're not going to get compensation payments from the VA. But even if you've got a 0% disability rating, you still qualify as a service disabled veteran for contracting purposes.
Yep.
There's a wonderful organization out there, Disabled American Veterans. You can Google them. And if you go there, they will also help you for free to get your records in through the VA's process so that you get that disability. Again, all you need is a 0% rating, but you may find that, hey, you'll actually also get some VA compensation out of it. And by the way, if you're an SDVOSB or if you're qualified as a service disabled veteran, you get some kind of other cool bennies that are not related to contracting, like free access to national parks.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe in your state, you get a free fishing license. And a big one that happened a couple of years ago is that service disabled veterans can now access like base facilities, commissary, exchange that used to only be for active duty and retirees. Now, service disabled veterans can also get onto base and also access all the MWR services as well. So it's pretty cool stuff. Anything that you want to add to that, Michael?
Yeah. So at our state here in Tennessee, the local state parks that we have been to, the state and local ones, all recognize the veteran status as well. So all you have to do, so like on my Tennessee driver's license, I have veteran on it. And that's all you have to show. You show that, you get into those parks. We were at one of them a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, we don't recognize your national park pass, but you are a veteran, so you get in free, and you get free access along with everybody in your car to everything we have in the park. So there was like the planetarium and other things like that. Everybody got in free to that. Another one that is not government contracting related that's really cool, if you hit a certain threshold of disability, you can have a portion or maybe all of your property taxes waived. And so that's a big one. Josh didn't know about that. And I was like, Josh, did you know if you hit this threshold, at least in the state of Tennessee, and Missouri has different rules than Tennessee, But yeah, depending on where you live, you could have a good portion or all of your property taxes waived simply by having your veteran status in
I
there.
better look into that one myself.
Yes,
I
yeah. So
haven't
you
looked
got to,
into-
yeah, you got to look into
There's
that.
so many benefits out there, man.
Yeah. There's so many benefits, but I think back to part of the point that you were making about having the cleared record. I think most people believe like, hey, I don't want to be a burden on the system or whatever, but it is a right that you have earned. It's something you earned. When you signed up, you basically wrote the government a blank check to send you anywhere, do anything with you, and they did. And they did what they wanted with you in some cases, and some people don't make it. And and there's benefits for those people. There's also benefits on the back end for when you hit not just retirement age, but when you like need a nursing home or you need in-home care, stuff like that, where now you're going to have less paperwork to get those benefits that you need as well. It's just going to be an easier process because you've already got it all documented. But for me, I'm like, hey, I did earn this. And right now I'm going through the process. They call them CMP exams. I don't even know what that's called, but anyway, you go through these medical exams. I've had the hearing one right now. I'm going to have one on, I've got knee problems. I've got foot problems. I've got back problems. Cause there's also issues where most people don't realize, like for me in basic training, I fell in a hole, no joke, fell in a hole because we were out marching at night. And there's this like 3-foot hole that I fell in and I fractured my foot. And they were like, well, we can put a cast on it and hold you back in basic, or you could just wear tennis shoes for a couple of weeks and that way you'll graduate on time. Which would you prefer? And I was like, well, I want to graduate. So like, okay, no problem. Take some ibuprofen, right? Right. That's what they do. Take that. But because of that, because it was not treated properly, I have knee issues, back issues, neck issues. And I'll go back to the state of Tennessee, how they do it here. At the county buildings, they have what's called veteran service officers, VSOs, and every one of them have it. Every county seat has it here. So check in your state, see if you've got somebody like that, where you just go in and you start talking to them about what happened. They will initiate your paperwork. And when they initiate it, they make a request for your medical records, which is by far the hardest part of this whole process, right? And so once she requested my medical records, a couple of weeks later, she had those digitally from the VA. And instead of me having to go, what month did I go see the doctor? Because I didn't get a copy of my medical records when I ETS. So when we were able to review them, I was like, man, I went to the doctor a lot more than I thought I did for my knees and my feet and everything like that. So I had all this medical evidence and I was able to then document the dates and everything better because she had pulled those medical records for me. But she didn't stop there. So like she continued to ask me questions like, how is this impacting you today? Let's write that up before we submit for you. She went down a mental health road with me, said, this is nowhere in your medical records, but have you ever had these things happen to you? Like, yeah, that did happen to me. I did lose a friend, even though we weren't in combat, because I didn't really think about losing my direct supervisor in a car accident as, well, that's something that happened to me in there. And yeah, I think about that every day almost for the last 20 something years. And so there was other things that happened to me and my family while I was in. They're like, hey, you're a soldier 24/7. So let's document all of it. Let's let people actually, do a review with you, and let's let them make a determination of whether this is service connected or not. And so that's you, but you don't have that insight as just an average person. I consider myself a very smart guy. I feel like I know a lot, and I was clueless about this process and the things that I should be asking and the things that people should be asking me, and they weren't. So I think that's one of the benefits of working with somebody besides just doing this paperwork on yourself initially to get, certified or go through the VA's portion. Cause that is also a challenge where somebody can say, well, I've got a disability, but they've never gone through the medical review with the VA. You've got to do that first and then apply for your SDVOSB through the SBA. Right. And if you do that, you'll be well off there. Now, the problem with going through the VA for your service connection stuff is it takes time.
Yes.
So it takes a lot of time in some cases. And for us, or for me specifically, I applied in April. It's like that was my initial thing, was in April. It took me until September to get the first exam. That was the first exam, and that was my hearing one. I've still not heard a date on the following 2 exams that I have to get. I don't have any idea when I'm going to get those. Now, because I submitted in April, once I get my ratings and stuff, I will get back pay on that. But it may take me a year, 2 years to go through that process. And that's why you can't wait. You've got to initiate that quickly, because it could take a lot of time. The same thing with your VA stuff. So I'll just give you a quick story. So when I joined RSM Federal, I owned 0% of the company. And after probably a year or so, Josh was like, hey, we're going to make you a partner now. And to start off, we're going to give you like 1% of the company or whatever it was. And then there's escalators in there. And then you'll eventually own like 49, because you can't own 51 because I'm the SDVOSB and you're just the VOB, right? But when we recertified the first time, the VA just dragged Josh through the coals. They were like, who's this guy? Does he have control of the company? Like, we had to massage our write-up because they were like, where did this guy come from? And why does he own a portion of the company? And so even if you do still own that majority stake and you have control and ownership, it does raise red flags or back then to the VA, probably now to the SBA. So the write-up just has to be really well done. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, where I've seen them say, well, this person is, and they name their title and it's some great title like executive vice president or COO. And they start naming all the responsibilities, and it starts to look like the owner really doesn't have control of the company anymore. And so you've got to be very careful with how you word that, so that you're not, just trying to puff up somebody who's on the team. It's like, in actuality, they don't have control. They have a portion of ownership, but they don't have control. And that's how ours is really set up. But anyway, there's a handful of things there for you to think about, and some examples of how we've had challenges going through that ourselves. So,
and that was some great information. And one of the things I want to say as well is that another tip that I would suggest, that if it's not really like cut and dry, like, for example, like what Michael was mentioning, if you've got like multiple partners in your business or other things going on in there, one recommendation I might make is also to look for a good GovCon attorney out there that might be that does this kind of day in and day out. And we have some partners that we work with. We don't get paid to send you to anybody. So, but there's a lot of little things, nuanced things that can be in those operating agreements and the bylaws that can get you denied when you go through the process. And you want to kind of make sure that you're not going to get denied when you go through the process. I can give you one example. The first time I went through the process, I was denied because in my bylaws, somewhere in my documents, there was like a first right of refusal provision that we didn't capture. I don't even think that's a stopping point these days, but that's kind of like those little bitty things that'll get you. So either work with somebody that's very versed inside of looking at all of this stuff. Typically, if you've got 100% ownership, it's pretty easy to just kind of get through the process because there's no other owners, but there's a lot that they start to take a look at if you've got shared ownership with other people.
Right. Yeah. And just to go on that, so documentation wise, your articles of incorporation or organization, your bylaws, all those kind of things, any of those documents, depending on how detailed they are, could trip you up if you have some little clause in there that shouldn't necessarily be in there. The other thing that I've seen, and I've actually told a client, I'm like, you've got to appeal this, and you've got to maybe even threaten to sue the SBA on this one. This is the most egregious thing I've seen so far. Was a situation where it was a woman-owned business. And so it was not a veteran thing, but it was a woman-owned business. She was applying for it. And the SBA said, well, since you're married if you ever got divorced, your spouse is entitled to 50% of your assets. So they actually forced her, which this is what I thought was just completely over the line. They forced her, and she didn't challenge them, to actually have her husband take 1% ownership, even though she had 100%, take 1% ownership and sign a document that he would not sue her if they got a divorce for the other 49% that he was technically owed. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Like that it's a hypothetical situation that may happen. And now you're going to create tension in this husband and wife by having this sign this post-marriage prenup almost, right? And so I'm like, don't do this. Don't sign this. They had already done it by then. But so if you are married and you've just said, well, I'm just going to get 50-50 ownership, like, don't do that. Well, don't do that. Make sure it's at least 51-49. So like in our situation, so I have my own private company. I'm the sole owner, so that there's no question from the SBA. It's like, hey, Mike is the sole owner of this thing, because I'm the only veteran in the house. So,
yeah, Michael. And I mean, for those of you guys who are in community property states, essentially, by default, technically a lot of the certifications would look at that like, well, technically, your spouse owns 50% anyway, even though that they don't own anything so it gets complicated. So, and these rules change all the time. So again, that's why I think that, really using a good GovCon attorney, by the way, if you're looking for one, if you go to govology.com, if you go to like our resources tab, click that, we'll have a trusted experts and look for attorneys. There's a number of GovCon attorneys there. It would really be good just to kind of go over the things. Also Apex accelerators. We're going to share a link with you about those folks and how you can leverage Apex accelerators. But so Michael, I want to kind of like just shift here and just to make everybody clear, because Michael and I just talked about two different processes. One is for getting your certification through the SBA, and the other one is if you are looking to get disability through the VA. That's a completely separate process, just so you guys know that. Now, if you're a veteran, you can still go through the certification process. And what I would encourage you to do is that don't wait, go ahead and get your certification. You won't be able to get your SDVOSB certification until the VA gives you a rating. But like Michael said, that could take you a year, right? So we don't want you to have to wait. We're going to give you some resources to go out there and get certified. And I've got a few links on the screen. I'll pull my screen up and share that with you guys. So Michael, see here, I'm going to ask you to verify that you can see the screen here. Give me a second. All right. Can you see these resources here?
It's there.
All right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about these resources. So the first thing that we have is we do have a on-demand webinar. This was done by Dr. Shana Nicholson, and it's called the Step-by-Step Guide to Registering as a Veteran-Owned Small Business. This also applies for service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. She did a really wonderful job. It'll all take you again through some of those eligibility criteria, but she goes to the portal and then goes step by step. And I can tell you guys, like the big part of getting through this in your first shot is really preparation and working with somebody knowledgeable that can help you get all your documents in order, and have them ready. You have to digitize these documents so that you can upload them in the portals. But really, if you do the preparation work, usually you can get through the certification in the first time. The second link that I'm showing on my screen is the current application portal. So veterans.certify.sba.gov is the current application portal, the resource page. So if you want to go there, that's where you're going to create an account. And then creating an account, by the way, doesn't certify you. You'll create an account and then you'll have to upload some documents into the portal to get your certification. Also, on that website is the veteran database. So if an agency or anybody or yourself, you're trying to look yourself up to see if you're in the database, that's where they're maintaining, one place where they're maintaining the database. The other place where they're maintaining that information is at the SBA's dynamic small business search. And that website is dsbs.sba.gov. So you can go to that website. And this is the one also the contracting officers will likely use for market research purposes and also to verify your status as a veteran. But now, if you are a certified veteran or a certified service disabled veteran, and you pull up your own profile, and I encourage you to do this, go to dsbs.sba.gov. Again, that stands for the Dynamic Small Business Search. This is used, by the way, both by contracting agencies as well as prime contractors. And look up your own company name, and it should populate it unless you opted out of the public search. It should populate for you. When you see that, you should see a section that says certified veteran, certified service disabled veteran, yes or no. So if it says yes, you're good to go. If you don't see it there, if it says no, you might need to go through this process, right? I would also encourage you, if it happens to say no, go and look yourself up if you think that you've already gone through the process. So if you've previously gone through the VA's verification process, they transferred everybody over. So you should already be certified, okay? So you should already be in there. But again, look yourself up, make sure you are. If you've been through the verification process and you don't see yourself in that portal there, veterans.certified.sba.gov, or in the DSBS system, reach out to your local SBA district office and ask them why you're not in there. For everybody else, if you have not gone through the process, either through the VA when they were doing it or through the SBA this year in 2023, that link number 2 is going to be your portal for getting set up. Also, I want to let you know that Apex Accelerators, formerly known as Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, or PTACs, are out there and available to help you guys. This is a program that's funded by the Department of Defense and also funded in part by a co-host, usually a state or a nonprofit organization or a university will be the host for these centers. And these folks are very well versed in the certification programs, and they will also be able to help you step through this process. To find a local Apex Accelerator, you can go to www.aptac-us.org and just click on the map, find the state near you, and reach out to them. Also, I know that some of the Veterans Business Outreach Centers are out there, and they also do some help with veterans trying to get through their certifications. So I put a little bit.ly link, bit.ly/VBOC, if you want to find the resource page on the SBA website for the VBOC. And if you scroll down, they'll tell you how to locate your local VBOC. And by the way, the VBOCs can help you guys out with some other things as it's related to business development. And also Apex Accelerators can also help you guys out with some other things as it's related to government contracting. Last but not least, if you're having trouble finding help through any of the resources we mentioned, we always encourage folks to reach out at support@gavology.com, and we'll try to do our best to point you to the right places. Michael, do you have any other good resources that I've not mentioned here, or anything else that we should mention?
Yeah, I think you hit on a bunch of them. And I think Apex has their own website now.
Yeah, they do have an official website. I still like the Association of Procurement Technical Assistance Centers website just for finding the Apexes.
The one thing I'll say is when you're looking at DSBS, that's not just for looking at your veteran status. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that you need to make sure is updated. You can go update that profile or portions of that profile yourself. And it should also show your hub zone, your 8A, or any of those certifications that you have should show up in there. So make sure all of that information's there. Make sure it's in your SAM profile. So sometimes there's issues with it. So make sure it's all in there. If you have any trouble with that, let somebody know, let them, us, there's people we can connect you to that can help you with that. I think we're ready for some questions here. Carol, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'll wrap up and close this episode of GovCon Coffee and Issues. So thank you for joining us. And let's take some questions. So let me pull up my chat box here.
So the first one up there is, so if we are a VA CVE, then it shouldn't be a big deal to get SBA certified, right? You are correct. That shouldn't be that big a deal, but you may have to create an account if you don't have one on the SBA's website. Yeah, I may have to register for that and go in there. So that shouldn't be a big deal. The people that are going to really struggle are the ones that never went through the process and just self-certified.
Yeah.
The next one is really just a comment there on.
Let me piggyback on that one for a second, Michael.
Okay, sure.
So there still is going to be also a recertification process. So like if you were like in the last stages of your 3-year thing with the VA and they transferred you over, I think SBA is giving folks an extra year or something like that. But the way that you can tell when your certification with the SBA expires is, again, go to dsbs.sba.gov, look up your profile. In that box that says that you're certified, there's also going to be a date. So you can go there and look at how long your certification has remaining. Then there's going to be a process to also go through the recertification, which we're not going to talk about on this show.
The final tip on that's really brief. Start early.
Yeah.
Don't start the month before it expires. Do it 6 months before.
Yeah. What else we got on the questions, Michael?
Well, I don't see a ton of questions just yet. There was one, remember to always appeal decisions. Make sure you never miss any VA deadlines. So basically on that one, if the government comes back and says, well, I know you say you got ringing in your ears or whatever, but we don't really think, you can appeal those decisions. So there's a lot of things you can appeal. So be aware of that. And like they said in here, don't miss any deadline. When the government says you got 3 months or 3 weeks to respond with the paperwork necessary for that.
One person says it took them 20 years to get their 100% rating, which again, I think that was, and I've had a friend like that as well, Michael, where it's like, he literally had brain surgery kind of thing going on during the military.
Yeah.
And, I think his initial rating was 30%. And over the time he appealed and ultimately got that up to 100%. But again, like Michael was saying, there's veteran service organizations out there that can help you. Disabled American Veterans are another good resource. So, and those services are free.
And I'll say something about the 100% rating. Definitely continue to appeal and work your way up on that, because there are things that from your injuries that will affect other things like me, my back, my neck, a lot of big issues. But when you're looking at the 100% rating, there are 2 versions, and I apologize, I don't know the names of them. Carol, you might know, but there's a difference between them where one is you're 100%, but it's like a permanent and total versus the 100% where you can still work. And the 100% where you can still work is the one you want, because that allows you to continue running your business. It allows you to bring in income. Because if you take the permanent and total, I think that's the name of it. I'm not 100% sure of that. Maybe somebody can correct me. But if you take that one, it basically is like the equivalent of being on Social Security disability, where you can't go over a certain threshold of income, and it's going to limit your ability to grow your business. So you've got to be careful on which path to choose on that 100%, because it could cause some significant issues to your business strategy here. Because I know plenty of people that are 100% simply because they could wake up on Monday, feel fine, wake up on Tuesday and not be able to get out of bed for 3 weeks because of whatever's going on in their back, neck, whatever it is, right? Or something else going on. So just be aware that there's 2 versions of that, and one of them will stop you from growing the business. Carol, do you want to take the next? I think the next one's a
Yeah, I
comment
think
as
there
well.
was a question. Has the federal government sent any notifications to VOSBs, SDVOSBs regarding the change of certification requirements? I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't seen anything personally. Michael, have you seen anything?
So I haven't, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean anything.
I mean, there's been a lot of information that's being put
Yeah.
out there, but in terms of a formal email, I don't think that I have actually received anything, or if I did, it went to spam, I think.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like a lot of this stuff goes to spam. A lot of people I know clear their spam without ever looking in it. So you may have gotten something, you may have gotten a letter in the mail and thought it was trash. So they should have notified you in some way, but doesn't mean they would have. James had another good comment there about recommending everybody saves all the documents they get in this process. I 100% agree. You will use these documents all the time for something. So save everything digitally so you can upload it easy. You don't want to be going and making copies and scanning and all that kind of stuff. So
another comment says, our company went through the process with the SBA's help and working with a procurement counselor, and it was smooth. It took no time at all for us in New Hampshire. So
nice.
Good job, guys. And all the way, and also, by the way, those resources that we mentioned, Apex Accelerators and VBox, free for you guys. So, and I would also just put out a word of caution, because there's a lot of like folks out there that's going to try to take a bunch of your money to help you go through this certification process, you know? So I do think that there's a value in getting help at points in time, but don't pay for what you can get for free is the message. But if you do need to make some investments, make the investments.
Yeah.
And the example that I use is that if you need to sit down with an attorney to go over your bylaws and everything like that, you know, that might be something that an Apex Accelerator Center, you know, really can't do, because it's really a legal document. And so, however, that said, there are folks out there, you're probably going to get hit up at some point in time if you're in the database. And just note that there's these free resources available for you out there.
Yeah. I see one from Tim there that says, we had one where they were denied because the bylaws said they would arrive at a decision by consensus. So that's a very popular bylaw to put in. So again, reviewing your bylaws, step one. Depending on how complicated they are, you may need an attorney. But if there's something simple like that, you can make that change to your bylaws. Everyone who's part of ownership can approve them, and you're done. And you don't need an attorney. But as Carol said, if it's more complicated, might need to hire somebody. And it's usually not that expensive to get that kind of help. So.
Yeah. So the next question is, if I am dissolving an entity that is already CVE verified, small business, because of a bad partner, am I allowed to get recertified under my new entity that's a sole proprietor? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
So.
Yep. No explanation needed on that. You know, once you're a veteran, you're always a veteran, you know.
Yeah.
And on the SDVOSB side, it's always going to be that way, unless you wind up in a situation where you're giving up a good chunk of the ownership. So never give up 50% of the ownership. Always keep that 51.
Yeah.
So.
And that's pretty cool, because it's unlike the SBA's 8A program, which if you are already, you know, certified through the SBA as an individual, I'm pretty sure they don't let you set up a new company and do it again. Doesn't matter if you have a bad partner or you graduate from the program.
Yeah. And then James says the total and permanent is where you can work on that one. I had it backwards. So I don't know what the other one is besides total and permanent, but yeah. So
he says, if you get healed by Jesus, you will not lose your payments.
I love that.
My owner was 10%. He appealed and got 40% and was told not to appeal again because he could lose his 40%. I don't know if he used his own lawyer or the VA's people. What is correct for his appeals, etc.?
I mean, it depends on how he wound up going from 10 to 40. And if there is something else. So like in my situation, my VSO has already told me they're going to come back at 10% simply for the tinnitus. That doesn't include my my feet and knees, back, neck, or any mental health stuff. So like I've still got CMP exams I've still got to go through for that. But if they come back and they've looked at everything, I could review and say, no, this is worse than you say it is. And then I could come back, and say, hey, I've got other things connected here. So it really depends if they just put in for one thing and they're just not happy with the percentage. How big is it? What's the hearing loss? If it's a hearing one, they use third party people to evaluate you. So it really depends on what the issue is. It's hard to comment on one like this of what they should do. Again, I like the VSOs we work with. They're very aggressive at trying to help you get to 100% over time. But that's their point. It's like, we're going to do this over time. We're going to get you in, get you approved, get you 30, 40, 50, 60%, whatever it is, and then come back and put in other things that we have. I think this is probably a really good case to reach out to the DAV that Carol mentioned earlier, one of those groups. There's also, if you just Google, there's a lot of people on social media that are starting to provide this service as well. Those are different fees. So you could do a consultation with somebody, give them your case and see if it makes sense. But, I don't think we have enough information to give real good guidance on it.
The next question is, I can see the company I work for is SDVOSB certified by the SBA via dsbs.sba.gov, and we are due for renewal in 2026. Is there anything we should do in the meantime to make sure our renewal goes well? Right now, I don't know really the answer to that, Michael. And I don't know if the SBA kind of like at some point before your recertification program comes up will send out a notification email. I do not actually know the process for the recertification yet. But one thing I would say is, continue to work with your Apex accelerators, your VBOC, but I would also say, connect with your SBA local district office, because they have a couple of folks that work there. One in particular is called a business opportunity specialist, and their role is to help folks out with government contracting stuff. But also, they also have veterans business officers. Usually, sometimes that's a collateral duty that works with a lot of the veterans exclusively. So get to know your local SBA office and particularly like the BOS and your veterans business officer. And those may be one and the same, but those are good resources for you. Michael, do you have any thoughts on the recertification process and what maybe folks should be doing?
Yeah, I think right now there are a lot of unanswered questions around it. It should be a fairly simple thing to do, and you should be good through whatever your date is. Should is the key word there, but there's nothing stopping you from getting in SAM and just making the transition and doing it early. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. So my advice to everybody is always get in that SAM or get in that SBA website as soon as you can, because there's no reason to wait.
Yeah.
There's
one more thought I have on this, Michael, is that if you're already certified and you make a change to your business structurally, if you add a partner or you do a JV or something like that, make sure that you're talking again to the resources that we mentioned, attorneys out there that specialize in GovCon, Apex accelerators, etc., because there's a requirement for you to notify the government if things change. So if you change something, you may have to recertify at the change. Again, I don't know what the answer is on how quickly you need to kind of do that, but you should be updating the government as changes occur in your partnerships or other things of that nature. What's the next question on the board there, Michael?
It looks like one question's been asked multiple times and consolidated here by Claudia about, but I don't necessarily understand the question, even though it's consolidated here. If they have to update sam.gov before the end of the calendar year, do we already have to have the certification in place? Next time in January 24. I mean, so when it comes to your SDVOSB, I mean, you're going to get it when you get it, right? So if you don't have it, it'll go in your profile as soon, fairly quickly after you have it. So it really doesn't matter when you get it. I guess the point for like this whole podcast today was making sure people are aware that it was changing to a new platform. You need to get in the new platform and you need to do it sooner than later, if I could sum it up, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to your SAM profile, there was a comment earlier in this thread here about updating your profile early, often. With your SAM profile, every time you make an edit, it extends that a year from whenever you make that edit, or at least that's the way it was. And so I recommend probably about every 6 months, you go in there and make a change to something, make some sort of edit. That way you're never worried about that, expiring for whatever reason. So the SAM profile and your SDVOSB, two separate things. Your SDVOSB is going to show up in your SAM profile. So it doesn't matter when you could update your SAM profile today and then work on your SDVOSB between now and the end of the year. That's not an issue. So you don't have to do the SDVOSB before you update your SAM profile. It's going to happen automatically. So.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. And I did see a comment from one of the Apex accelerators that mentioned that they've had 3 clients approved within 5 calendar days of submitting the application. So the process is great on the SBA side, I guess. So I want to say kudos to the SBA, because I know that, they work very hard with a lot of limited staff there at the SBA. But, when the VA first rolled out this process, there was a lot of hiccups in it with the certification program. So, and it does look like it's been pretty good and streamlined. So that's awesome. Michael, any last thoughts before we can end the session here today?
Just be diligent about what you're doing. Leave yourself plenty of time and you'll be fine. So that's my biggest thing.
All right. Well, hey, Michael, thank you so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the screen real quick again. We also posted these links. So these are the links to the resources that we talked about. Am I showing the right screen, Michael?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. So if you want to go to those sites, those are where they can help you get through this certification process. We also put those links in the chat, but you can, for the bit.ly links, you can just go directly to them, bit.ly/SBA Vet Cert. There's the Veterans Certification Portal, again, Apex Accelerators, the VBox. And then again, if you have any trouble with, you can't find anything with those 4 resources, email us and let us try to get you to the right places. That's all I've got today. Michael, thank you again. This was a really great conversation. And I hope that those of you guys out there who are veterans and service disabled veterans, you guys can take action on this before we roll into the new year, because I do think we may see a lot of maybe delays happening just by the sheer numbers of folks that are not yet certified and when they realize that they do have to get certified. So again, Michael, I appreciate your time, and we'll let you get back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Sounds good, man. Take care. See everybody next time.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.